I held the wedding invitation in my trembling hands, staring at the date printed in elegant script. Tomorrow. My sister's wedding was tomorrow. But according to my mother's voice on the phone, crackling with irritation, the wedding had happened last week. One of us was lying, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly who it was. My name is Zelda Vance, and I'm 32 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've been the reliable one, the responsible older sister, the daughter who always stepped up when my family needed help. I worked my way through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, graduated summa cum laude, and built a successful career as a senior marketing director at a tech firm in San Diego. My life looked perfect from the outside, polished and professional, but there was a rot at the core of it that I'd been ignoring for years. That rot was my family. I stood in my pristine apartment overlooking the harbor, the phone still warm in my hand from where I dropped it moments before. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The cream-colored invitation mocked me from where it lay on my marble countertop, next to the expensive jewelry set I'd purchased as a wedding gift. $15,000 worth of antique sapphire and diamond pieces, a family heirloom set I'd found at an estate sale and carefully restored. I'd been so excited to give it to Margot, imagining her face lighting up, imagining for once that she might actually appreciate something I'd done for her. The voice in my head whispered what I'd been refusing to acknowledge for years. She never appreciated anything you did. None of them did. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and scrolled to Sarah's number. Sarah Chen was my best friend from college, the one person in my life who'd always been honest with me, even when the truth hurt. She'd been the maid of honor at Margot's wedding. If anyone would tell me what really happened, it would be Sarah. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up. Her voice was cautious, almost guilty. That alone told me everything I needed to know before she said a single word. Zelda, hey, I was wondering when you'd call. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Sarah, my mother just told me Margot's wedding was last week, but I'm holding an invitation that says it's tomorrow. What's going on? The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Sarah sighed, a heavy, sad sound that made my stomach clench. Zelda, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but Margot made everyone promise not to say anything. The wedding was last Saturday. Your parents sent you a fake invitation with the wrong date on purpose. The words didn't make sense. I heard them, understood them individually, but together they formed a reality so cruel I couldn't process it. What? Why would they do that? Because Margot asked them to. She didn't want you at the wedding, Zelda. She said you were too successful, too pretty, too put together. She was afraid you'd steal attention from her on her big day. Your mom and dad went along with it because, well, you know how they are with Margot. I did know. I'd known my entire life. Margot was the baby, the precious one, the daughter who could do no wrong. She was 28 now, 4 years younger than me, and she'd been coddled and spoiled since the day she was born. I'd spent my childhood being told to be quieter, to take up less space, to not outshine my little sister. I'd accepted it as normal, the way older siblings sometimes had to sacrifice for younger ones. But this wasn't sacrifice. This was cruelty. My hand curled into a fist, and I slammed it into the wall before I could stop myself. A small crack appeared in the pristine white paint. The sharp pain in my knuckles felt distant, unimportant compared to the agony ripping through my chest. She said I'd steal attention? My voice was barely a whisper. Sarah, I bought her a car when she got into her dream college. I gave her $10,000 when her business failed, and she couldn't make rent. I've been there for every milestone, every crisis, every single time she needed help. And she thought I'd try to steal her wedding day? I know, honey, I know. It's not fair, and it's not right. But that's what she told everyone. Your parents backed her up. They said you were too independent, that you made them feel inadequate, and that Margot deserved one day that was completely hers. I laughed, but it came out wrong, harsh and bitter. Too independent? That's rich. You mean I was too useful as a bank account but too inconvenient as an actual person? Sarah didn't disagree. She couldn't, because we both knew it was true. After I hung up, I stood in my apartment as the sun set over San Diego Bay, painting the water gold and crimson. I'd always loved this view. I'd worked so hard to afford this place, this life, but suddenly it all felt hollow, like a beautiful stage set with nothing behind it. The memories crashed over me, one after another, each one a small cut I'd ignored until I was bleeding from 1,000 wounds. 5 years ago, when I was 27 and just starting to build my savings, my parents had called me in a panic. They were going to lose their house. My father, Richard Vance, had made some bad investments, and they were 3 months behind on their mortgage. The bank was threatening foreclosure. I'd drained my savings account, $30,000 I'd been setting aside for a down payment on a house of my own, and given it to them. They'd promised to pay me back. They never did. Worse, they'd acted like I was obligated to help, like I owed them for raising me. 3 years ago, Margot's boutique marketing firm had failed spectacularly. She'd made poor business decisions, spent money on expensive office furniture and lavish client dinners instead of building a solid client base. When the bills came due and she couldn't pay them, she'd come to me. I'd given her $10,000, enough to cover her debts and give her a fresh start. She'd never thanked me. She'd simply taken the money and moved on, as if it were her right to have my financial support. 2 years ago, I'd bought the house in La Jolla. It was a beautiful property, worth $200,000, with an ocean view and a spacious layout. I'd intended to live there myself eventually, but my parents had needed a place to stay. Their own house, the one I'd saved from foreclosure, had needed extensive repairs they couldn't afford. So I'd let them move into the La Jolla house rent-free, telling myself it was temporary, that I was helping family. Margot had turned one of the bedrooms into her office. She used the house's impressive address for her business, took photos of the ocean view for her social media, and told clients it was her house. She never asked my permission. She simply took what she wanted, the way she always had. And the holidays. God, the holidays. Every Thanksgiving and Christmas for the past 3 years, I'd received a text message an hour before I was supposed to arrive at my parents' house. We're actually having dinner at the neighbors. Family only. Maybe next year. Family only. As if I weren't family. As if I were some distant acquaintance they were too polite to uninvite directly. I'd made excuses for them. They were busy. The neighbors were important to their social circle. Margot needed the attention because she was going through something difficult. I'd convinced myself that if I just kept being patient, kept being helpful, kept proving my worth, eventually they'd see me as more than an ATM with emotions. But they never would. That was the truth Sarah's words had forced me to confront. To my family, I was useful, not loved. I picked up the wedding invitation and stared at it. The fake date seemed to mock me, printed in expensive ink on heavy cardstock. They'd gone to the trouble of having a special invitation made just for me, just to keep me away. The cruelty of it, the premeditation, made my hands shake. Then I did something I'd never allowed myself to do before. I let myself get angry. I ripped the invitation in half, then in quarters, then into tiny pieces that scattered across my countertop like snow. The violence of the gesture felt good, felt right. For once, I wasn't going to be understanding. I wasn't going to make excuses. I wasn't going to be the bigger person. I was going to make them pay. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house in my BMW, the one I'd bought with my own money after years of careful saving. I didn't call ahead. I wanted the element of surprise. I wanted to see their faces when I confronted them with what they'd done. The house sat on a quiet street in a nice neighborhood, the kind of place that screamed upper-middle-class respectability. I'd made that possible. Without my $30,000, they'd be renting some dingy apartment somewhere. The thought made my jaw clench as I pulled into the driveway. I didn't knock. I used the key they'd given me years ago, back when I was still considered trustworthy, still considered family. I pushed open the door and walked straight into the living room. My father, Richard, was sitting in his leather armchair, reading the newspaper. My mother, Catherine, was arranging flowers in a vase on the mantel. And Margot was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, probably looking at her wedding photos. They all looked up when I entered. My mother's face went pale. My father's newspaper crumpled in his hands. Margot's expression shifted from surprise to something that looked almost like satisfaction. "So," I said, my voice cold and level, "the wedding was last week." My mother opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She looked like a fish gasping for air. "Zelda, sweetheart, we can explain." "Don't." I held up my hand. "Don't call me sweetheart. Don't lie to me anymore. I already know the truth. Sarah told me everything." Margot stood up, her eyes flashing with anger. She was wearing designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, both of which I recognized because I'd given her the money to buy them last Christmas. "Oh, so Sarah ran crying to you, did she?" "Of course she did. She never understood that some things aren't about you, Zelda." I took a step closer to her, and she actually flinched. "Good. Things aren't about me? You deliberately excluded me from your wedding. You had Mom and Dad create a fake invitation to keep me away. You said I was too successful, too pretty, that I'd steal your spotlight. Do you have any idea how psychotic that sounds?" "It's my wedding!" Margot's voice rose to a shout. "I deserve to have one day, one single day, where everything wasn't about perfect Zelda. Do you know what it's like growing up in your shadow? Miss Summa Cum Laude? Miss Career Success? Miss I Can Afford Anything?" I laughed, and it was a harsh, ugly sound. "Are you kidding me right now? You think I've had it easy? I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college while you got everything handed to you. I saved your business when it failed. I bought you a car. I've given this family over $50,000 in the past 5 years, and you think you grew up in my shadow?" My mother stepped between us, her hands raised in a placating gesture. "Zelda, please, you need to understand. Margot has always felt like she had to compete with you. You're so independent, so successful. It makes us feel inadequate. We thought if we just gave her this one thing, This one special day without you there to overshadow her, she could finally shine. The words were so absurd, so disconnected from reality, that for a moment I couldn't speak. I make you feel inadequate? I turned to my father. Dad, say something. Tell me you don't actually believe this. Richard wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared down at his newspaper, his shoulders hunched. It's complicated, Zelda. You don't understand what it's like for us, watching you succeed while we struggle. You struggle because you make terrible decisions. The words burst out of me before I could stop them. Dad, you nearly lost this house because you invested in a pyramid scheme. Margot's business failed because she cared more about looking successful than actually being successful. And Mom, you've spent the last 10 years playing favorites so blatantly that I'm surprised you even pretend to care about me at all. Catherine's face flushed red. How dare you speak to me that way? I'm your mother. Then act like it. I was shaking now, years of suppressed anger finally breaking free. A mother doesn't exclude her daughter from family events. A mother doesn't help orchestrate a cruel prank to keep her away from her own sister's wedding. A mother doesn't make her child feel like a bank account with legs. I walked over to the mantel, where there was a framed photo of Margot and me as children. We were at the beach, building a sandcastle together, both of us laughing. I picked it up and looked at it for a long moment. That little girl in the photo, the one with the bright smile and the hopeful eyes, she'd believed that family meant something. She'd believed that love and loyalty would be reciprocated. I threw the frame on the floor. The glass shattered, sending shards skittering across the hardwood. The sound was satisfying. Final. I'm done, I said quietly. I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done being the responsible one. I'm done sacrificing for people who don't appreciate it and never will. Don't call me, don't text me, don't ask me for anything ever again. I walked out of the house, leaving them standing there in shocked silence. As I got into my car, I heard Margot shout something after me, but I didn't look back. I'd spent 32 years looking back, trying to make things work with people who didn't want me unless I was useful. That ended today. The first thing I did when I got home was call my lawyer. David Chen had handled some contract negotiations for me at work, and I trusted him to be discreet and ruthless. I needed both right now. David, I need your help with a family matter. It involves debt collection and property rights. We met at his office the next day. I brought every document I had, every bank statement, every text message, every email. I laid out the full history of my family's financial dependence on me, and I watched David's expression grow increasingly grim. Zelda, you have a strong case here. The loan to your parents for the mortgage, you have documentation that it was a loan, not a gift? I have emails where they promised to pay me back. I have text messages acknowledging the debt. They've never made a single payment. David nodded, making notes. And the house in La Jolla, you're the sole owner? Yes, they've been living there rent-free for 2 years. I never formalized it with a lease or rental agreement. I was trying to be nice. That's going to work in your favor. You can give them notice to vacate. 30 days is standard in California. He looked up at me, his expression serious. Zelda, I need to ask. How far do you want to take this? Because once we start this process, there's no going back. Your relationship with your family will be permanently damaged. I thought about the shattered picture frame, about the fake wedding invitation, about the countless holidays spent alone while my family celebrated without me. I thought about my mother's words. You make us feel inadequate, as if my success was something to apologize for, as if I should make myself smaller to accommodate their egos. As far as it takes, I said. I want every penny they owe me. I want them out of my house, and I want legal documentation of all of it so they can never claim I abandoned them or refused to help them. David smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Then let's get to work. Over the next week, I methodically dismantled every financial connection I had to my family. I closed the joint bank account my mother had insisted we open for emergencies, which she'd used to pay her credit card bills. I transferred the $15,000 loan I'd given to Margot into my parents' names, making them legally responsible for it. And I activated a formal debt collection process for the $30,000 they owed me, complete with market rate interest that had been accruing for 5 years. The total came to $42,000. I gave them a payment plan, $1,000 a month for 42 months. It was more than they could afford, which was exactly the point. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they owed me. I wanted every payment to remind them of how they'd used me. But the house in La Jolla, that was my masterpiece of revenge. I'd purchased it 5 years ago for $200,000. The real estate market in San Diego had exploded since then, and the house was now worth close to $400,000. My parents had been living there, treating it like their own property, and Margot had been using it as her business address, pretending it belonged to her. I had David draft an eviction notice. 30 days to vacate, and then I drove to La Jolla to deliver it personally. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I pulled up to the house. I knew Margot would be there. She held client meetings on Wednesday afternoons, using the ocean view and the expensive furnishings to impress potential customers. I wanted to interrupt one of those meetings. I wanted her to feel the same humiliation she'd inflicted on me. I used my key to let myself in. Margot was in the living room with a young couple, a laptop open on the coffee table, her presentation in full swing. She looked up when I entered, her face going from confusion to anger in the space of a heartbeat. "What are you doing here? You can't just walk into my house." I held up the folder containing the eviction notice and the property deed. "Your house? That's interesting, Margot, because according to these legal documents, this is my house. My name is on the deed. My money purchased it, and you've been living here, running your business here, without paying me a single cent in rent." The couple on the couch looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. The man started to stand. "Maybe we should come back another time." "No, stay," I said pleasantly. "This will only take a moment. Margot, you have 30 days to remove yourself and all your belongings from this property. That includes your office equipment, your furniture, and any personal items. If you're not out by the deadline, the sheriff will remove you." Margot's face turned an ugly shade of red. "You can't do this. Mom and Dad live here." "Mom and Dad are included in the eviction notice. They've been living here rent-free for 2 years. That ends now." I walked over to where her laptop was plugged into the wall and unplugged it. The screen went dark mid-presentation. "I'm also going to need you to stop using this address for your business. It's fraud to claim you operate out of a property you don't own or lease." "You're insane!" Margot lunged at me, but I stepped back smoothly. Years of kickboxing classes had given me good reflexes. "No, I'm done being used." "There's a difference." I handed her the folder. "Everything's in there. The eviction notice, the property deed, and a letter from my attorney explaining that if you continue to use this address for business purposes, I'll report you to the IRS for tax fraud. You've been operating a business out of a residential property without proper permits, without paying rent, and without declaring the value of that free housing as income." Margot's hands were shaking as she took the folder. The young couple had already gathered their things and were edging toward the door. I didn't blame them. This wasn't the professional, put-together businesswoman Margot had pretended to be. This was a woman whose entire life was built on lies and borrowed resources, and it was all crashing down. "By the way," I said as I walked toward the door, "I've also filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. Apparently, several of your former clients have been trying to get in touch with you about work you promised to deliver but never did. Using my property as your business address made them think I was somehow involved. I've clarified that I have no affiliation with your company and provided them with documentation proving this house belongs to me." I left before she could respond. As I got into my car, I heard her screaming at the young couple, trying to salvage the situation. It wouldn't work. I'd already destroyed the illusion she'd built. She'd have to face reality now, just like I had. That evening, my phone started ringing. First my mother, then my father, then Margot again and again. I let every call go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear their excuses, their justifications, their attempts to manipulate me into backing down. But one call I did answer. It was from Liam, Margot's husband. "Zelda, please, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand." "Is it?" I was in my apartment, looking out at the harbor, a glass of expensive wine in my hand. I'd earned this view, this wine, this peace. I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me again. "From where I'm sitting, Liam, this is exactly as in hand as it needs to be. Margot is having a breakdown. She's crying. She can't sleep. Your parents are terrified they're going to be homeless. This isn't you, Zelda. You're not cruel." "You're right. I'm not cruel. But I'm also not a doormat anymore. Margot deliberately excluded me from your wedding. She worked with my parents to humiliate me, to make me think I'd somehow gotten the date wrong, that I'd failed as a sister. Do you understand how much that hurt?" "I didn't know about that. I swear, Zelda, I had no idea what Margot had planned. If I'd known, I would have stopped it." "But you didn't stop it. You went along with it. You stood at that altar and married her, knowing I wasn't there, and you didn't question why. You're just as complicit as she is." There was a long silence. Then Liam said quietly, "What do you want from us? What would make this right?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can do to make this right. You all made your choice when you decided I wasn't worth including in your lives unless I was writing checks. Now you can deal with the consequences." I hung up before he could respond. Later that night, Sarah called. She'd heard about the eviction from Margot, who'd apparently reached out to her in a panic, hoping Sarah could intervene. "Zelda, is it true? You're really going through with this?" "Every word of it." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Good. It's about damn time." I'd expected her to tell me I was going too far, that I needed to be the bigger person, that family was family. Instead, she was supportive, even proud. It made something tight in my chest loosen just a little. "You really think I'm doing the right thing? Zelda, I've watched your family use you for years. I've bitten my tongue because it wasn't my place to say anything, but you deserve so much better than the way they've treated you. What they did with the wedding was unforgivable. If you'd done nothing, they'd just keep taking advantage of you. At least this way, you're setting boundaries. Pretty extreme boundaries. Sometimes extreme situations call for extreme measures. I could hear the smile in Sarah's voice. Besides, I'm a journalist. I know a good story when I see one, and this is one hell of a story. That comment stuck with me. Sarah was an investigative journalist for the San Diego Tribune. She specialized in exposing corruption and abuse, particularly in family businesses and social organizations. A few days later, she called me with a proposal. What if I wrote an article about toxic family dynamics? Not naming names, at least not at first, but using your story as a case study. The way your family treated you, the financial exploitation, the emotional manipulation, it's not uncommon. A lot of people go through this and think they're alone. Think they're the problem. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to keep this private, to handle it quietly and move on. But another part of me, the part that was still furious, still hurt, wanted the world to know what my family had done. Wanted them to face consequences beyond just financial ones. Do it, I said. But if you're going to tell the story, tell all of it. Don't hold back. Sarah's article ran 2 weeks later. It was titled, "The Invisible Child, When Success Makes You a Target in Your Own Family." She laid out the full story, every detail of financial exploitation, every holiday I'd spent alone, every sacrifice I'd made that had been taken for granted. She didn't use my name or my family's names, but anyone who knew us would recognize the story. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The article went viral online, shared thousands of times across social media. People flooded the comments section with their own stories of family exploitation, of being used and discarded, of realizing too late that their loved ones saw them as resources rather than people. And then my parents made the worst decision they possibly could have made. They went to their friends in the community and started spreading their own version of the story. According to them, I was a heartless daughter who'd abandoned my struggling family out of pure selfishness. I was cold, unfeeling, obsessed with money. I'd always been difficult, always been ungrateful for everything they'd done for me. They forgot that I had documentation. I had bank statements. I had emails and text messages. I had the property deed to the La Jolla house and the eviction notice. And when their smear campaign reached Sarah's ears, she was ready. The follow-up article ran a week later. This time, Sarah named names. She included scanned documents, redacting sensitive information but showing enough to prove that every word she'd written was true. She included screenshots of text messages where my mother had casually mentioned I wouldn't be at Thanksgiving because family is complicated. She included photos of Margot using the La Jolla house in her business. Promotions, claiming it as her own. The backlash against my family was swift and brutal. Catherine and Richard's friends turned on them, realizing they'd been lied to. Margot's remaining business clients canceled their contracts, unwilling to work with someone who'd been exposed as a fraud. Local news picked up the story, and suddenly my family was the talk of San Diego, notorious for all the wrong reasons. I watched it all unfold with a strange sense of detachment. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? For them to face consequences, for them to hurt the way they'd hurt me. But now that it was happening, I felt less satisfaction than I'd expected, and more of a hollow sadness. They'd done this to themselves. That was the part I had to keep reminding myself. I hadn't forced them to lie about me. I hadn't forced them to exclude me from family events. I hadn't forced them to use me as a bank account. They'd made those choices, over and over again, and now they were dealing with the results. 3 weeks after the eviction notice, my family showed up at my office. I worked on the 15th floor of a sleek glass building downtown, and they came during business hours, making a scene in the lobby. My assistant called me in a panic. "Zelda, there are people downstairs claiming to be your family. They're demanding to see you, and security is getting ready to remove them. Tell security to let them up, but have them escorted to the conference room, not my office. And call Michael. Michael Black was our head of security, a former Marine who didn't tolerate nonsense from anyone." When I walked into the conference room 5 minutes later, my parents, Margot, and Liam were all there. They looked terrible. My mother's eyes were red and swollen from crying. My father seemed to have aged 10 years in the past month. Margot was practically vibrating with rage, and Liam just looked exhausted. Michael stood by the door, arms crossed, watching them with the same expression he'd used to watch potential security threats. Sarah was there too. I'd called her on my way down, asking her to be a witness to whatever was about to happen. "You wanted to see me," I said calmly, taking a seat at the head of the conference table. "Make it quick. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Catherine lunged forward in her chair. "Zelda, how could you do this to us? That article, those horrible things Sarah wrote, our friends won't even talk to us anymore." "Sarah wrote the truth. If you're upset about it, maybe you should examine why the truth is so damaging to you. You're destroying our lives." Margot's voice was shrill, desperate. "I've lost clients. I might have to close my business. Mom and Dad are going to be homeless. This is cruel, Zelda. This is evil." I looked at her for a long moment. "Do you know what's cruel, Margot? Deliberately excluding your sister from your wedding and then lying to her about when it was happening? Do you know what's evil? Taking over $50,000 from someone and never even saying thank you. You created this situation. All of you did. And now you're experiencing the consequences. Richard finally spoke. His voice was hoarse, defeated. What do you want from us, Zelda? What will it take for you to stop this? Stop what? Enforcing my legal rights to my own property? Collecting debts that you legally owe me? Defending myself against your smear campaign? I shook my head. I'm not doing anything wrong, Dad. For the first time in my life, I'm doing what's right for me instead of what's convenient for you. We're your family. Catherine's voice broke on the last word. No, I said quietly. Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me. Family doesn't use each other. Family doesn't lie to each other. You might be my relatives by blood, but you stopped being my family a long time ago. I pulled out my laptop and opened a video file. Before you go, I want to show you something. This is from the security system I installed at the La Jolla house. I installed it 2 years ago, after some items went missing and I wanted to make sure the property was secure. You didn't know it was there, did you? I turned the laptop around so they could see the screen. The video showed the living room of the La Jolla house, time-stamped 2 days before Margot's wedding. Margot was on the phone, pacing back and forth, her expression animated and gleeful. God, I'm so glad Zelda, won't be there. Margot's voice came through the speakers clearly. I know Mom said she felt guilty about the fake invitation, but honestly, it's such a relief. Zelda always has to be the center of attention. She'll show up looking perfect, and everyone will be talking about her instead of me. This way, it's actually my day. The video continued. Liam entered the frame, and Margot turned to him with a smile. Don't look at me like that. You know it's true. Zelda thinks she's so much better than everyone else just because she has money. Well, guess what? For once, her money can't buy her way into something that's mine. I paused the video. Margot had gone white. Catherine was crying openly now. Richard's head was in his hands. Liam wouldn't look at me. That's your real reason, I said. Not that you were afraid I'd steal attention. You were jealous. You've always been jealous, and instead of working on yourself, instead of trying to build a better life, you decided to tear me down. You wanted to hurt me, to humiliate me, to make me feel small. Well, congratulations, you succeeded. I closed the laptop and stood up. The eviction stands, the debt collection stands. And if you ever contact me again, if you ever try to manipulate me or lie about me or use me in any way, I will release this video and every other piece of evidence I have to the public. You'll be famous, Margot, just not the way you wanted. Michael opened the door. This meeting is over. Please escort them out. As they were led from the conference room, Margot turned back one last time. I hate you, she said, her voice thick with tears and rage. I hope you're happy, all alone with your money and your perfect life. I'm happy, I said, and I realized it was true. Happier than I've been in years. After they left, Sarah pulled me into a hug. You okay? Yeah, I think I am. That video is going to be great for my next article. I laughed despite myself. You're shameless. I'm thorough. There's a difference. The next few months were intense. My family tried everything to overturn the eviction, hiring lawyer after lawyer, but the law was on my side. I owned the property. I had every right to reclaim it. They moved out 3 days before the deadline, taking their belongings and leaving the house in terrible condition. It cost me $20,000 to repair the damage they'd done, but it was worth it.